Oh, it works now. Welcome everyone to the IPLD community and sync meeting. It's great to see that the streaming is working finally again. So yeah, it's November 11th, 2023. And yeah, as every 4 weeks now, we go over stuff that people have worked on, but also discuss things, or if people are excited about projects they've built with IPLD. Feel free to join and tell us about it. And I even see that we are now more people. That's great. Hello, Adine. That's great. Yeah, so with updates, I will start with my updates. I have a bit news from the Rust IPLD ecosystem and IPLD and the multi-formats ecosystem. So there has been a multi-hash bug fix release, which is kind of like an interesting one. Therefore, I mentioned it. It's about no standard. So you can basically in Rust you can build without the standard library, and this was broken with Serde. And yeah, the fix needed some unsafe code, which is unfortunate, but it's hacking around const generics. So yeah, it ended up with a nice hack, and yeah, I think I'm happy with the result. We only found this because someone wanted to upgrade multi-hash for using in CID. So there will hopefully be a CID release soon. And then there was a PR for Serde IPLD DEX CBOR, which also fixes a bug, or actually makes the large integer handling better in the decoding code path. But I've also made a PR with the serializing code path, because one thing which is really weird about CBOR is that the negative integers are the full 46-bit range, but with a negative sign. And the fun part is it's even bigger than the maximum positive unsigned 64-bit integer. Because the maximum size 64-bit integer is 2 to the power of 64 minus 1. And the negative one even can go to the not minus 1, but to the actual 1, which is, yeah, from the implementation perspective, insane. And to me, it seems like, yeah, CBOR is pretty theoretic and not really built by people doing practical things. But anyway, in Rust, we soon support this. Yeah. Again, a fun bug to discover or find out about and yeah, work around. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the items I have. So I see that people are still typing, but does anyone want to go next?
I'll have a quick go. It's another one of those months of lots of little things. Hard to pull them together and describe all of them, but I'll try and pick off the memorable bits. So there's been various in the JavaScript ecosystem. There's been releases of various sort of secondary components like SHA-3 and Blake2 that have been not brought up to speed with the rest of the stack for because we did the JS multi-formats release a while back that was ESM only, and we haven't brought the others up to speed with that, and there's been some breakage, so it's been difficult to use some of these extra components together. So those have been updated and released. There's another one coming down the pipe, the core CBOR and JS parsing engine. That's been able to sit in the background without breaking anything, but there's been a little bit of work going on there. and a new release of that, and that'll bubble through the stack. Probably won't be noticeable for people though. There's been various updates and fixes to the JavaScript Unix FS. We found a bit of functionality it wasn't able to handle and managed to fix that. And then there's two other teams that are working on some traversal and verification utilities in JavaScript through Unix FS for the trustless gateway spec. So that's really interesting work. The Web3 storage people with their trustless gateway that goes through Cloudflare, hosted through Cloudflare. They've got a traversal thing, and then there's the Saturn team, which is doing a in-browser verifier that can take a car and then verify it walking the same traversal in JavaScript. Those two efforts haven't quite been unified, but they hopefully don't need to walk too much of the same paths. But yeah, that's lots of interesting stuff in JS at the moment. In Go, the main items I can think of is Go Car has had a few new releases with some minor features and some fixes. There was a release of Go Car 0.12.0 that 0.12.1. No, I think it might have been 0.12.0. That tried to fix something, but then we realized that it actually changed the functionality of something, and so that ended up getting fixed. The latest is sorry, it went up to 2. So 2.12.0 was this version, and 2.13.1 is the latest one that we would recommend people be on. It's a minor feature for skipping over cars to sort of index them if you wanted to do them outside. I'm not aware of any other uses other than Boost uses it directly, and we broke Boost in a branch, but that's about it. So Go Car has been updated. There's a new package called Go Trustless Utils in the IPLD org that's got a bunch of trustless gateway pathing and traversal utilities and various types for describing trustless gateway requests and responses. That's an extraction of code that was being reused across a couple of projects. And if I had had time, and if I had remembered this meeting was coming up, I would have presented a presentation on some of this, because one of the interesting things in here is I think for this meeting is that I think Trustless Gateway has defined a pathing spec for DAGs that is a decent, a minor extension to standard pathing, but a decent subset of selectors that or selector functionality that is fairly useful. And if viewed in that way, then I think this is the trustless gateway stuff is a good development for describing DAGs in what common ways that people want to describe them. And so one of the things that Go Trustless Utils does is extracts out some of the traversals that we do. So if you, instead of doing a traversal with Go IPLD Prime directly, you can do it through this utility, and it essentially simplifies the traversal API. And that's one of the things I've been interested in working on is better interfaces to traversals, perhaps skipping around the complexities of selectors, because I think it's one of the sort of the gnarly edges in Go IPLD Prime, particularly of traversal, is selectors and the messiness and the complexity. And so often you come to IPLD traversals and you want to do something really simple, and you're made to jump through all these hoops to do something simple. And it's very rare that you want to do the complicated stuff that all the complexity is there for. So providing simplified APIs, I think, is a good thing to do, and it's sort of one of the things that's come out of this. And it'd be interesting to see if we can extend that work and make it more useful outside of just this trustless gateway work. Can we provide something that is more generically useful for here's a DAG, here's a way I want to, select part of it. So anyway, there's some thoughts around that, but that's the main IPLD specific stuff that I can list. There's a lot of other little things, but probably not worth listing. Yeah.
Thanks. I see that Adina also has some updates, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I just say, Rod, I agree. Pathing good. This Shane, kind of didn't go very far, but I feel like we're missing pathing with like how to do anything other than UnixFS as a multi-block data transform. But I feel like if you had that, you would be in pretty good shape. Yeah. So I guess I haven't been to this meeting in a little while, but since then I've kicked a couple of hornet's nests. Some of you, I can see both of you on the call may remember the conversations around what the Filecoin piece CID should look like. The result was usable for things like, I just want to basically show a hash in a block explorer, but not particularly good at transferring data around. So as a result, there are two proposals for how to do this better. Basically, instead of treating this as a Merkle tree, which it's not a very good Merkle tree, you just treat it as like a big block of data, like you would for a Blake 3 hash or something, instead of trying to represent the internal tree structure, because it's not a very good tree. There are sort of two proposals for this. One is sort of the bare minimum that's required to be a useful CID. And the other one is more featureful. That's like, can this just be used as an arbitrary hash function that lets me reference arbitrary data? So if people are interested in that, whether from like, because they're interested in sort of the Filecoin stuff, or because they're like, this sort of pushes some of our boundaries around like CIDs and multi-hashes and whatever, like, what is it doing? Why is it doing? Might be interesting to take a look. I guess maybe the two most obvious ones are like, what are CIDs for? Which, in my opinion, is like for verifying the data, right? If it's just like, if you just liked multi-base and you could have put anything on the other side, that would be using multi-base. And CIDs are content identifiers, which means that they has to be like a verifiable mapping between the bytes and the CID. And the other is what's reasonable to put in a multi-hash digest. Is it anything that you can use to verify that a stream of bytes is the stream of bytes you were looking for? Or is it something more restrictive than that? So some of I wish there was more engagement on GitHub instead of through other channels, but one of the more featureful options that sort of looks like a regular hash function relies on shoving more data in the multi-hash digest. Right? And it's like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Is it sad that once we've exceeded, like, once we get a little bigger than a 256-bit hash, that base 36 encoding won't fit it into a subdomain for like IPFS gateways? And subdomains are sort of a useful security property on the web, right? So those sorts of things kind of pop up there. And that is all for me for now, but hopefully by next time I'll have more stuff to share.
Thanks. Yeah, I will certainly. I think I haven't get to the more featureful version yet, so I'll definitely have a look at it. So because yeah, I mean, I'm also certainly interested in like what are multi-hashes, what they are used for, or CIDs, and like, yeah. So I mean, we also like have discussed this, like whenever we meet in person, we I'm happy to discuss it, or we did in the past. So yeah, I have to be well prepared for lab week. So
So what's the path for these two FRCs? How do these move forward? Is it just discussion then voting, or what? How does this?
I mean, they're FRCs, so they're not FIPS. Don't seem to be needing votes. I think mostly there are like 3 or 4 stakeholders that are using bad CID, that are using like sort of unuseful CIDs at the moment. Like they are not useful for the purpose that they're using them for. And they need to change how they're using their APIs to select one of these CIDs or do something else custom that fits their purpose. So ideally, those like 2 or 3 stakeholders would decide what works for them.
So these are not mutually exclusive then? It's not one or the other.
Well, no, so these 2 are one or the, I mean, I guess they don't have to be one or the other. We could have 2 different multi-hashes, but I feel like that wouldn't make anyone happy. We could introduce 2 new multi-hashes.
Oh, I see. Your second one is a pull request over your first change set.
So the first one, yeah.
You're right.
Like
okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were just gonna like merge them in once they were pull requests. I was sort of waiting for some more engagement and people to give thumbs up, and they were like, "Oh no, we're just gonna merge the draft, and then people can discuss or make changes to the draft." But ultimately, I feel like at the end of this, there should really only be one FRC 69. There shouldn't be like 2 different ones that some people use and some people don't use, because either way, you need to merge a change to the codec table, the code table, to say this multi-hash number means this. And I feel like adding 2 new ones for the same Filecoin piece thing feels kind of awkward. People want it and there's demand for that, then sure. But I feel like right now we just need to decide which of A or B we're going with.
I wonder whether, because this was always slightly awkward, a slightly awkward fit in the multi-codec table from the beginning, and I wonder if clearing some of this stuff up actually helps us a bit with that precedent, because we're always setting precedents in the multi-codec table when we compromise, or we let something in because we can't say no or whatever. And a lot of the time that's fine, but there are some cases where it pushes us towards this space of meaninglessness, and Compy was a little bit close to that. And I wonder if this helps us get out of that bind where injecting meaning back into it. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, right? Like I think it's actually great that so much of the discussion there was on GitHub that like I wasn't involved in, but I could go see some of what was going on. And what was settled on was like was just very awkward, right? It was like tagged with the Filecoin serialization thing, because it was like, this isn't really either, but people seem uncomfortable with the large block thing and just calling it one big block because it is internally a Merkle tree. And it's like, but it's a bad tree. And it turns out it's like a bad tree in practice. And so we should treat it like a large block. And I think that also has become a little more friendly to people as there have been other pushes in like the IPFS ecosystem around, using Blake 3 and large objects.
Yeah, the large chunk thing is a bit of a shift in thinking there since that time. Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that like those people are accepted, right? I mean, there are trade-offs to using large blocks in places. Please don't make me load a 1 terabyte JSON object into memory before I try and decode it, right? Or something like that. That sounds bad. But like there are very good reasons to use that in places. I also think it's interesting. It's like, okay, we're reserving yet another code for roughly the same data, but we're doing it because there's some user experience that didn't feel good about the last one. And to some extent, the point of the code table is to like be able to evolve past mistakes, which means we got to let people make mistakes.
It's good to have that example. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like people did things, they made mistakes. We try and move on. We try and move on. We try and limit mistakes so we don't do things like maybe encode like 100 or more elements for the various Blake 2 hashes nobody is using. Right. So we try not to do those again. But reserving a few numbers that you might need, you might have problems with later. Seems not so bad.
Yeah. As we already talked about multi-hashes and multi-formats, I just want to mention, which I forgot to mention, that currently there is a push in the IETF to form a multi-formats working group, and there's email discussion. So if anyone is interested, so I think it's public emails, and especially if you use multi-hash, you can chime in and say like how you use it, but to be specific, currently it's really about multi-hash and multi-base. So we're not talking about CIDs yet, to keep the scope small, and yeah, because as you can see, we are still discussing CID details, so it's good to start with those ones first. But if anyone interested, basically search for multi-formats in IETF and you should find everything you want to know. Or of course, like ping us if you basically, even if you're interested in getting even more deeper into it, feel free to ping me, and I will redirect you to the right people. All right. Anything else?
There's probably more interesting stuff to say about the multi-formats and multi-base stuff, but it's just there's been a lot of chatter in those repos. There's probably some discussions that, if folks are really interested, they can go and check out. Particularly in that the big one that where it was update the docs ready for IETF something or other. There's a big pull request that merged, but in that pull request there was a lot of interesting discussion, just sort of delving into history and why things are the way they are, and what do we do about base 2 and all that sort of stuff. I think there's some valuable discussion to be kept on GitHub in there.
I actually kind of thought it was, I like some of the pushback in the multi-base repo of someone basically saying, hi, I don't like somebody's base, can we remove it? People are like, it's a silly base, but like, why remove it? It's a valid base. That's kind of, that's kind of how this goes. People are gonna make hashes you don't like, you don't have to include them. People are gonna make bases you don't like, you don't have to include them. We're just trying to leave room for err on the side of growth, rather than everything must be like 100% perfect and everyone must include all of them in their standard libraries.
Yep. And I actually think that's one of the good things about that particular base, is that it toys with the edges of your sensibilities about what's going on here. And not, I don't think in ways that I think it's been useful for things like the discussion about Unicode code point at the beginning, that actually clarifying that as a thing does give us some interesting room to move. So maybe not essential, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm also like, when it came up with when the emoji base encoding came up, I also wasn't really a fan of it, I have to say. But now looking back, I think, it's a good idea to really have it as a good example, or like, pushing the boundaries and then, explaining to people why it is there. Or, so it's kind of like, an interesting piece. So, but I also would say, like, if people implement multi-base, they don't necessarily need to be implemented.
This doesn't seem a critical component of your Pi multi-base library if you don't want it to be.
Yeah.
There's a multi-base on there that none of us implement, which is ProQuints. I've had this tab open on my computer for a while. I'm just staring at the spec for this, thinking this might be really interesting to implement.
So it's actually sort of implemented in Go. It just sort of got ripped out. The
Okay.
history there is that for like a really long time, there was I don't know what to call it. Let's call it an Easter egg, because you could basically only discover its existence via error code or
Right.
finding a random Medium post where you could identify, you could use /IPNS/some proquint to identify an IPNS key, or I guess DNS link. But there was no docs for it. All that would happen is that if you basically typed in like a DNS label wrong, it would just say error not a valid proquint, because that was the order it was checking things. And that was the only reason
Right.
anyone had ever heard of this, is because they would be like, what is it? They typed in their thing is like, dot CZZ, and they'd see like not a valid proquint or something. And then
And then you
they'd
go
Google
Google
what
it.
is this, and they'd find this Medium post telling you about the proquints. So we were like, this thing is a base encoding. Let's just delete this from here. Nobody's using it. It was basically an Easter egg. If somebody would like it, though, this seems like a reasonable multi-base, because it's just a binary encoding. There's nothing IPNS specific about it. It's just proquint was already a binary encoding format before it was added there in the first place. That was sort of the compromise. It was like, let's remove it, and if anyone wants it, here is where you would go. Here's where you would put in pull request to go re-add it. Nobody has yet, so I think we're okay.
No. People seem to be happy with the minimal versions, which is good.
All right. Cool. Yeah, then what's left to say is that the next meeting will be in 4 weeks again, so it will be on October 9th. Yeah. And yeah, also like what we usually would like to have is perhaps some presentations. So if you have anything to present or any cool stuff you've built, feel free to reach out. Also like on the IPLD channels in Slack, Discord, or Matrix. And then we're happy to have you speaking at this meeting. All right. See you all in 4 weeks then. Bye everyone.